Good evening. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Could we have a determination of quorum, please?
Sarah Savilicek,
Here.
Larry Chesney,
Here.
Jim Barnes,
Here.
Tom Bruce. Here. Francine Donchik,
Here.
Philip Paran,
Present.
and Mike Lawson.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we have the ethics law announcement, please?
Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, 1, you have received a gift or loan, 2, you have a pecuniary interest, 3, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or 4, you provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, then you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you. The appeals procedure, Mr. Lloyd.
Most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date the decision is being appealed is signed by the Planning Commission Chair and/or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you. We're at item 5, general public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Moving on, item 6, possible action to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Chesney and seconded by Commissioner Donchak. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 7, possible action to approve May 7th, 2019 draft minutes.
Move to approve.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
I had spoken to Katie earlier today. There's a large portion of the meeting minutes that are absent, specifically with regard, Katie, to the joint discussion. All of the Washoe County Planning Commissioner comments are absent from the minutes. I brought that to Katie's attention earlier today. She indicated there was a problem with the contractor and the transmission. She has agreed to amend those minutes to include the comments from the Washoe County Commissioners for the joint portion of the meeting. So I would move to approve with the amendments that Katie will subsequently make.
I'm going to ask council, I don't think we can approve minutes that we don't have in front of us.
I think it's, I think it's appropriate though,
Okay.
to handle it that way. In the future, you will have to, what I would recommend is bring them back next month that with the amendments on them. You're approving them for now, what you have, and then next month you'll formally approve whatever amendments are on there. That would cover the concern that you just raised and also deal with the suggestion that Commissioner Lawson just brought up.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Commissioner Donchak
Second?
and seconded by Commissioner Lawson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're now to planning items, number 8A. If we could get this read into the record, please.
This is a presentation by the Nevada Department of Transportation regarding access management and proposed improvements along Pyramid Highway. And I apologize, Richard, I am not going to be able to pronounce your last name. I won't even try.
I will do that.
But the traffic engineer the supervisor from NDOT will provide this presentation. So,
Okay.
actually, he goes by OJ.
Okay, all right. Before we open this, is there any disclosure by commissioners for ethics or ex parte communications? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Richard Ojevolk, and everybody just calls me OJ.
You and I have similar last names. They're not pronounceable, yeah.
Yeah, it gets, let's say, confused a lot of times. I'm the Traffic Engineering Supervisor here in District 2. I'm here to make a brief presentation on access management. I'm hoping this is the clicker. All right. First, I'm going to kind of give you a background on access management, how we've got to where we are, and then I'm going to show you how it kind of applies also with Pyramid Highway, which is a project we have coming up that's privately funded, but it's going to employ some of these elements of access management into the design in the future. So access management, basically, access management is the control of access on highways depending on classification and types. And some of the basic information that we provide is that higher mobility, i.e. higher speeds, freeways and stuff like that, more connective, has the most restrictive access, going down all the way to local streets where there's relatively none. Some of the major things that we're targeted with as far as trying to help improve safety is eliminating the more serious damaging crashes. In today's age, everybody's happy to have property damage, but we try to avoid injury, not happy, but it's better to have property damage versus injury or fatalities. It's a goal that we're trying to reach, to zero fatalities as far as the state of Nevada. And with most of the smaller intersections you see, or the intersections you see, a large percentage are contributable to left-hand maneuvers coming out of the cross street. You have a 28% associated with lefts coming in, but then almost a combined 44% of accidents of all the total around the country, that of all this information that says on average this is what the statistics are. In addition to that, there's also proven studies throughout the nation that as the access points increase per mile, the crash rates go up also. Here's an illustration of just on the left, you can see that at a full-blown intersection, there's 32 potential conflicts. On the right, if you have an access control or limit your movements, it reduces it down to 8. And it simply boils down to the fact that as individuals, we can only process so much information at a time. So the less you have to look at and the less you have to process, the better things go for drivers. There's a lot of mitigation we look at, access spacing. Well, of course, a perfect example, tightly spaced signals. A good example, unfortunately, McCarran at I-80 on the east side here, from basically Nugget all the way up to Lincoln. There's like 5 signals in there. The progressive movement's horrible through there. So we really want to try to space out traffic signals at about a half-mile spacing. In tight urban situations, maybe down to a quarter. Same thing with driveways. The further apart, the better. It just allows less. Turning lanes, I have to say that dedicated left and right turning lanes are shown national studies to reduce crashes up to 60%. Indirect left turns, U-turns, which we're starting to employ in roundabouts, they keep traffic flowing. U-turns as mid-block alternatives relieve traffic signals. If you're going through tight access control, you can allow people to make mid-block maneuvers just to safely U-turn. Median treatments, two-way left turns, they are good up to a certain point, but mostly on lower speeds. In a lot of other jurisdictions around the country, they don't use two-way left turn lanes on roads with speed limits over 45 miles an hour, and in some states even less. Then also, one of the best forms is a non-traversable median. Basically, that's been shown to reduce traffic or reduce accidents in intersections or along highways up to about 16 to 20%. Last thing is right-of-way, which we always have to work on, but it's sight distance. Lots of times you pull up to intersections and you have to pull way beyond the stop bar to just see out, so we're also trying to work on that. You can see some of the relationships. FHWA to NDOT, they provide millions and millions of dollars of research, and it's valuable stuff from places all around the country, Colorado to Florida, North Carolina, Kentucky, and I believe 28 states, I think it's 28 states have adopted some kind of formal access management policies. Don't quote me on that, but it's some number like that. NDOT, NHP, we have to work with them on enforcements because a lot of these maneuvers we're trying to do, we're finding out a lot of northern Nevadas aren't comfortable with U-turns right now. The state that I'm from, originally we started access management back in 1995, and that was the same thing there. My son, who now lives in Orlando, I told him never to make a left turn at a non-signalized intersection. I said, go down, make a right, make a U-turn. And he gave me a lot of grief and agony about it, But after about 6 months, he called me up, and after 2 weeks of no power from a hurricane, he said, "Dad, I get it. It just is safer if you want to get out on the road to go down and try to, go down and make a U-turn." And then again, why I'm here tonight is working with our local partners, the Washoe County, City of Sparks, City of Reno, to try to see what's going to work and try to be the most affordable and balanced access and also increase safety. We just updated our access management standards in 2017, and it's almost, we've kind of set up a process, it's pretty cookbookish. I mean, that we can go to a facility, we can determine what type of access is there, and that we can employ an appropriate strategy to go through. But I want to emphasize that we're not just simplifying, it's based on a lot of research that nationally that we've looked at and digested over the years from the federal government and other states. Again, the relationship as far as with speed and the access, of course, when you're on the interstate, the higher speeds, 50 to 80 miles an hour, least amount of access. Interchanges, very controlled. As you come down, arterials are usually in the ranges of, 25 to about 50 miles an hour. And then you get down to the lower speed streets, 20 to 35 miles an hour, which you really need little to no access control. And then speaking, like I said, on federal research, this is some of the pages that we refer to as far as proven countermeasures that the FHWA, through their research, have said these are the things that have worked and have done the best in reducing crashes. Some of them that you can see, roundabouts, of course, but then you'll notice a mid-block where it's a right in, right out, and that they go, basically you circulate around the roundabout and make a U-turn. The other two at the bottom is a displaced left, and then another called an R-cut, where you have direct and indirect left turns at the intersection, but then you allow the people coming out to make U-turns further down the road. Some of the more advanced things, of course, you've noticed the diverging diamonds, where you cross over, you reduce the left turn conflicts, and then they even have what we call displaced left turn intersections, where you actually cross over the road in contraflow against traffic in the intersection, but allows you to make a turn, again, with less conflicts at the intersection. One of the other ones we employ a lot right now is a high T, but most of those are usually reserved for higher speed roadways. And then, again, it's just an illustration on some of the U-turn based solutions. And now I'm going to take this and kind of relate it to what we've got going on Pyramid Highway. So first I want to give you a little bit of background. This is a cover from the October 2001 Pyramid Highway Corridor Management Plan that was done by the RTC. As you can see, and I don't know if I can point, is that the table right here, that was back in 2001, the initial access management recommendations, but they did have access management recommendations for the roadway. And they realized back then that they had to have control of access. If you look at our most current table, here's an updated version of it, and these are the standards that apply basically to Pyramid Highway. And they're a little bit more, they're very similar, but they're just been refined as far as what we've seen and what we've seen that works in other states. So now if you kind of fast forward to 2018, the RTC has just updated their Pyramid Highway EIS, and I believe they have it signed off. It's either the draft ROD is being signed or the ROD has been signed. I'm not 100% sure, but this is basically the final document, and it's basically changed Pyramid Highway from basically Sparks all the way up to north of La Posada into a 4 or 6 lane highway with a 24-foot median with turn lanes to be incorporated in it. And here's an example of a very similar road down in Las Vegas, St. Rose Parkway. It's about a quarter-mile stretch where you can see the, I went too far. I killed myself. How do I go back?
Safety.
Please save me. Thank you. Let me get back to the right slide. Sorry about that. Sometimes I get overzealous with the clicker. All right, so again, this is a similar highway. You can see the directional U-turn or median opening here. This is down on St. Rose Parkway. The speed limit's 55 and the ADT is about 46,000 cars a day. So now I'm going to move. So there's two concepts presented here, and the first one is the original RTC concept, which still holds true to the values and the recommendations that were in the previous set of recommendations I showed you for the study, and where it's basically a signal at Dolores, a solid median all the way up in La Posada. Eagle Canyon is off to the right with a solid median. Now, it's a good concept, except it does put a lot of pressure on the two intersections to be able to handle the U-turns that are going through. The concept on the bottom is a proposed development that is going in the city of Sparks. Oh, I did it again, or did I? Sorry. I'm on the last slide, and I will put my finger down and not touch it anymore. Okay, sorry, there. The bottom one is proposed private, where it meets our current access management standards. It allows for basically two left in, right out, or not full access, but partial access driveways. The one to the extreme right is the entrance to, I believe it's the tribal smoke shop. Then the second is St. James, David James, and then I'm bad on names. The one in between Dolores and David James is, I'm having a brain melt. Does anybody remember? I will point but not push. This street here, with the proposed signal at Dolores, this one will probably just be converted into a right in, right out. Here you can see a left in, and then you also still have a left in that will service David James on the non-Spark side or the Washoe County side, and then another median opening servicing the, I believe it's the smoke shop, and then you go back into the turn lanes for La Posada. So it's very similar to the one on top, except that we're, if you can notice, the ADT is projected to go up to 45,000, and with the current driveways that you have that are developed on the east side, it will help relieve the U-turns that are going on, that would be going on at the traffic signal. So we're just here to present this. It's not 100% approved at this time. I still have to vet this through my senior management, but I've been going through to the city of Sparks. I've gone through to the RTC because it represents a change in their plan, and I was coming to the Washoe County Planning Commission to kind of vet this through with you all. So with that, questions? Love it, hate it?
Translate it?
Anything?
And Madam Chair, just as a reminder, the agenda item is for the presentation, so
Yes.
you are free to ask clarifying questions, but not to have any deliberations, and there's no
Right.
action styled on it.
Yes. So before is there any public comment on this before I open it up to?
No, there is not. The agenda does not provide
Okay,
public
all
comment
right.
on this item.
Thank you. So I'm just going to start and go this way. Commissioner Lawson, do you have questions?
I do, Madam Chair, thank you. First, I'd like to say, OJ, really, really nice presentation, except for the operation of the slides.
I apologize.
So this is an access management plan for the northern portion of the corridor, correct?
Yes, sir.
The volumes, the 2040 AADTs are projected from the travel demand model?
Yes, sir. I took those out of the EIS. That they have
Okay.
in the travel demand model, yes.
Okay. As part of that travel demand model, I'm not sure what type of developments are included in that model. Are you aware of that, or does Lacey know, or were you even involved in that, Lacey? Okay.
No, I mean, I know that it should be it's not an exact representation of, because it's a guesstimate anyway, as far as the 2040, but it should contain at least a fair proportion of, I believe, most of the development that's going on in the area, because this is a hot corridor.
It is. Is it safe to say, would you agree, OJ, or not, that one of the things that's most problematic about doing access management is the evolution of development that you hadn't considered?
Anytime you do access management, it's tough because, one, you're not working in a perfect environment. Two, it helps. It actually helps in the in the considerations of development that you haven't considered, because you now are defining where the turning movements can occur. as opposed to without a median where people basically turn in front of you. So now there are defined points where people begin to get used to know, to start looking for, and to get familiar with. So it helps driver experience along a corridor. So you can picture if I'm driving along Pyramid and there's absolutely no median and people can just turn left any place they want to, versus now you kind of know that there are certain locations in between these traffic signals where people are flowing, and that's where the turns are going to be concentrated out. So in a way, I think that it allows land use to be more flexible if you have access management employed. And you can have, the driveways, now with the medians in place, there could be a valid argument that you might be able to put in more driveways as far, because now you know that they're not going to be making just free left turns. So I think in a way it helps manage the growth that you have, and that's an opinion.
No, I asked for it, and I respect your opinion, and thank you for that. Can I be specific about the Mount Rose corridor and ask you some questions
you
about
may.
that? So with the Mount Rose corridor,
Sorry, and Madam Chair, I need to
Yes,
ask
thank
on
you.
this. Is this related to the Pyramid Highway access, or, I mean, you're asking about the Mount Rose corridor, which is not Pyramid Highway. The agenda item is access management on the Pyramid Highway. So are you tying it to access management on the Pyramid Highway?
yes, in fact, I'm trying to. So a little leeway. So I like what you're doing on the Pyramid Highway because it's thoughtful and it's proactive, and I agree with your assessment that proactive access management does help manage traffic that comes from development later. An example is I know that NDOT is asked for input on access management with respect to development projects. And so as an example, along the Mount Rose corridor, NDOT got a lot of grief for access management that I don't feel is your responsibility. Development occurred in that corridor without a collective view of the corridor. So each time a development comes forward, they look at the access point on the state highway system. And they say, if we build this many homes, then this many trips impact this intersection. But it never is there an opportunity that allows for the cumulative impacts in a corridor with respect to access management in the Pyramid corridor or any other one. And so I think that's a deficiency that can be rectified by a better cooperation between the county, the city, RTC, and NDOT to begin a process wherein they start looking at the cumulative impacts with respect to access management. So you guys don't get handed at the end of the day, fix our problem, when the problem was basically the responsibility of us in terms of approving development with respect to focusing on a single intersection rather than a corridor. Would you agree with that assessment?
No, I agree with you 100%, and I actually have an illustrative example that, and we wish we could do all the roads, and there are some that have, that have slipped by, but this is a letter that was generated in 2004 between NDOT that was provided to Washoe County, City of Sparks, where everybody kind of agreed what the access was going to be on this road back even 2004. But again, you have to remember it was predicated by the EIS and the studies in there. And yes, we do need to more cooperatively work together, both Washoe County, City of Sparks, City of Reno. We have the same problem. We're working together now with Lyon County on US 50 because it's the same type of undivided highway that we need to start employing those access management things on. Unfortunately, we're running behind as far as being able to produce that magnitude of study. So, but yes, I agree with you 100%, is that there should be collective upfront collaboration between all the municipalities and the DOT to work out these access management plans now and make sure that they're approved and, in concept, in theory, approved by all the councils and everybody involved. And I would agree with that 100%.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Doncheck?
I have no questions at this time.
Commissioner Haran?
I think I can relate it to the Pyramid Highway. It's about roundabouts.
Oh, it's an access control process, so I'm willing to answer the question. That's fine.
Is there a specific guide as to how big a roundabout has to be? I mean, on your particular road?
Well, it should, there's certain design criteria. We have like anything from what we call minis all the way up to large traffic rotaries. But the common ones you see here are the roundabouts. For simplicity, they should, we keep them to 2 lanes because once you get, it's been found through studies, 3-lane roundabouts start to get confusing. Two-lane roundabouts are confusing enough. But then there's rule of the thumbs we have to follow. Like the capacity for a single-lane roundabout is about 20,000 cars a day. So when you think about using a roundabout, you have to look 20 years out in the future and say, hey, is that going to last at least for 20 years? And we're going to do that. For a two-lane roundabout, the numbers vary a little bit between about 35,000, about 38,000 cars a day. And that's where, when you make the investment, you need to look up front and see to make sure that, you're not building something that may go be out of service within, before 20 years. So you have to be confident in your projections, and you have to make sure that it's designed appropriately. A case, we had an incident with a high crash problem down on 88 and, what's the crosswalk? Centerville. And we decided to put in a mini, even though it probably should have, if you looked at it from the design process, it should have been maybe a bigger roundabout, but it's accomplishing the goal where the crashes have gone down tremendously, and it's really forced people to slow down. So sometimes in our design, we have to kind of tighten up the restrictions in order to get the results we want.
So is the overriding thing, though, traffic volume?
I'm sorry, sir?
The overriding decision is traffic volume?
It's, the major factors is, is severity of accidents you're experiencing there. Traffic volumes is one, right-of-way, geometrics, they all influence stuff. I mean, probably the biggest thing you do have to look out for is the safety element and the volumes. Because if the volumes exceed quicker than you think, then you're going to have a safety problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Chesney?
Yeah, do you have you sort of dead-ended this thing at La Posada or Eagle Canyon, but we've got serious congestion and problems farther north, clear up beyond Campo Rico, and we've got huge developments that are already approved and are breaking ground on them. Is there any studies or any?
Well, and that's one of the.
Expanding that from 2 lanes to?
No, and that's part of the reasoning that prompted me to be here tonight is that we've been experienced like up towards Winnemucca Farms. There's a signal proposed, I believe, at Ironwood, or I'm sorry?
Oh, really? That far out?
The street, I know in the planning section up there, there's a commitment for a traffic signal also up there. But this is the time now to get collaboratively together with Washoe County, City of Sparks, and to start planning out that access management and trying to make sure that developers that come in, they're going to beat us as far as money and funding, but get them to commit to these intersection improvements so that when we establish the access management at these major crossroads, that we have a plan like this in place to move forward.
Good.
And that's part of my motivation of being here, is to encourage that to happen.
Great, thank you.
Question that I have is, when you were pointing out the streets, and how far does this go back towards the Lazy Five Park and the library? Because right now, it's a right turn in and a right turn out, but people go down and
They make the U-turn at Dolores.
U-turn it on, but you're going into a private, you're going into a development, and people are, they're trying to, I think it's St. James or something, they're just kind of quickly turning around right there, and it causes.
I believe it's, and let me back up, is that right now we have access management basically all the way from just south of McCarran, all the way to just south of here at Lazy Five. And so with this piece going in, we'll have it from north of Dolores to La Posada. The little piece in the middle is that we're working with the City of Sparks to get that as a part of this. This is a privately developed, or this is funded by private development. So I'm kind of limited in what I can work, but again, partnerships with the City of Sparks will help do that. And even right now, there are people that come out of the library in the park and make the U-turn at Dolores.
Oh, it's Dolores, yeah.
Yeah, and just for information statistics-wise, I pulled some of the crash data. And so on this segment, it's about 1.44, I believe it is. Yeah, 1.44 crashes per million vehicle miles. Down on the access control side, it's about 0.99. So there's about a 45% reduction in crashes. And like I said, we are trying to work independently with the developer who's not involved with this portion, but the other to get that last segment built in, so it'll be continuous all the way up to here. And I've been trying to work, and when I say I, the department and collectively City of Sparks, Washoe County, and City of Reno have been working with these developers on not just this road, but all these roads, to try to fill in these gaps and make this stuff happen. It's just really tough, just the way this nature of things being piecemealed around here. And so, but hopefully, it's a good economy, so people are willing to go faster and contribute more. So I kind of work on that.
Commissioner Barnes.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Bruce.
Actually, I have a question of Trevor, and it has to do with, how do we, for lack of a better term, browbeat the applicants into getting this stuff written in stone for the access? Since my experience with watching over the years, it's been that a lot of developers, we won't say all, will promise anything, just get the approval.
Part of the, and we discussed earlier, was the coordination between, the county, the cities, and NDOT and RTC. Clearly to involve NDOT early on in the process, and so that it's not a surprise when the applicant receives a condition for such a request. And we've, we've worked with NDOT on a number of projects where we have actually had the developer, and through NDOT's conditioning, have had the developers make the necessary improvements in order to support these developments. And I think just a continuation of that cooperation is absolutely necessary as we move forward.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any, Commissioner Chesney?
Just along that note, a good example is what happened at Cali de la Pla. We had the three large developments there, and the developers threw their hands up and said, hey, we'll throw the money at this thing if you put a signal in, and it happened. So, he's exactly right. When times are good and the money's there and people want to move fast, they're willing to contribute to these traffic controls.
I hope you mean move fast to develop, not drive any faster on Fairleigh.
I think it's both.
Any other questions before we move on to item B of this agenda item? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
So we have item B, which is presentation again by Mr. Lloyd. Do you want to read that into the record?
Okay. This is a presentation by the Nevada Department of Transportation regarding advanced warning systems. Another difficult last name, by Sam. Sam, why don't you present your last name?
It's just challenging for you tonight.
We didn't
Notice how I
plan
just
that.
passed that on to you.
I am Adi. That's so this presentation is actually was prepared by Lacey Mosley. She's our consultant working on this particular project, and I'm the project manager on the NDOT side. So that's Lacey Kalkman with HDR. They are consultant for this particular project. Okay, good. So to give a little background and scope for this project, we realized that most of our advanced signal warning systems were not in conformity with what the MUTCD specifies. And then we realized that from signal to signal, they varied. So we set out with the intention of making sure we set out our guidelines and make sure all our advanced signal warning systems were in conformity, one, with MUTCD, and in conformity with each other, so that we didn't have people traveling from one place to the other and expecting something and seeing something else. So that was one of the things. NDOT, we had a previous guideline, but it wasn't comprehensive. It was bits and pieces. So we decided to put them all together, contracted HDR, and they were supposed to do a literature review, look at other states, what they have, nationwide, and come up with the best guidance system for us. We usually place the advanced signal warning systems when we have obscure locations where the signal is not easy to see, when you are changing from maybe a high-speed area into a local street where you are going to meet signals, we need to kind of inform you there is a signal ahead so that drivers can take precaution. And we have to follow some specific guides, otherwise we will probably be placing them everywhere. One of the usual things that would necessitate us to install an advanced signal warning system is the location, and then we have to time it right so that drivers will have ample time to stop. We don't want them getting right into the intersection when they are stopped. So we have what we call the dilemma zone. We want to make sure that the drivers do not find themselves thinking, do I stop, do I go? So we have to design all this, and that is one of the criteria we ask them to come up with. So as part of this, they are going to do a couple of things. I think one of the reasons why OJ wants us to bring this is that Pyramid is one of the intersections that we know everybody up north here is very interested in. We have a lot of advanced signal warning systems on Pyramid. And once Pyramid Highway, once we get the guidelines in place, the consultant has the first task to use the same guidelines to examine all the advanced signal warning systems we have on Pyramid and give us recommendations as to which ones we want to still keep. Do we want to modify them? Currently, all of them are active systems. What we mean by active system is simple, that once the signal is about to change to yellow, or when it changes to yellow, then the advanced signal warning system begins to flash. So it notifies drivers that there is something going on, so begin to slow down. Some states do the passive, where we have the warning systems on all the time, so they don't have to be triggered when the yellow is about to start. So that is one of the assignments that the consultant has. They have to tell us, when do we want to install the active, when do we want to install the passive, or when do we want to install the static, where it's just a sign and it stays there for driver's information. I already mentioned this, so we partially want to make sure that we conform with the whole nation and make sure that we are not out of conformity, but also we want to develop something specific for Nevada. If we have to stick to a lot of active, we would, if our engineering studies prove that that is what we need in our state. If we have to go the route that MUTC is suggesting, then we would, but we want to base it on engineering studies before we make the final decision. This is a list of all the advanced signal warning systems we have. Actually, when they went to the field, I think they found one or two that were not captured. That is, some of the counties are trying to install. So we have quite a bit, mostly up here, Las Vegas, and a couple of them in our District 3. So they are going to study all these intersections and then come up with a recommendation as to whether we are going to change from active to passive or take it out completely. So you will notice on Pyramid, after their study, some of the advanced signal warning systems would change. I would want to say it that way. They most likely would be taken out, those in between the first and the last. So currently we have one at almost all the intersections. We are going to reduce them and then keep just a couple of them on Pyramid. So when the time comes, we have a procedure. They are going to develop a procedure for us to follow in taking out the signals, including covering the signal heads for a number of days before we take them down, and making sure that we will do a before study and do an after study to be sure that taking down the signal, the advanced warning system, is better for the system or otherwise. So we have to make sure that we follow their recommendation and do a before and after study, just to be sure. This is the schedule they have. Right now, they've already started work. We gave them the notice to proceed in May. They're already doing literature review. They are in the field collecting data, and they're in the process of updating the guidance. Once they are done, then they will start going into the nitty-gritty of telling us which advanced signals we need to take out or modify. I already mentioned the three types of systems we have: the active system, the passive, and then the static. You will probably notice that all the ones we have are active, except for the new one that we installed at Cali de la Plata, which is a passive system, so it's always on. And we did that for one reason, which is we are trying to see how the passive is perceived by the general public, whether they are reacting in a negative way or a positive way. So far, so good. We've not had any crashes. It's also a new signal, so it's been received very well. We've not had too many public complaints, so we are happy for now. This is the old NDOT guidance that we had. It was basically telling us that when we have an isolated signalized intersection, or the first intersection in a series of intersections with signals, then we want to put in an advanced signal warning. When we are in a curve where visibility is poor, we typically would want to put in an advanced signal warning system. And we had a set of equations and the table to guide us in doing that. But HDR is now going to give us a more comprehensive system, which we would apply to the whole state. Let me put it that way. So our existing guidelines, follow the AASHTO. We made sure that we had enough sight distance for drivers to be able to stop. If we didn't have a good sight distance, we introduced the advanced signal warning system. So far, they've done a couple of literature review by looking at Minnesota and Utah, and we are not too far away. Basically, most of the things that they considered in placing the advanced signal warning systems, we were doing that. Isolated or unexpected signal intersections, limited sight distance, we considered the dilemma zone, giving the drivers enough time to stop, intersections that had too many crashes, and then we used our engineering judgments for some of them. Utah follows one of these charts to place the advanced signal warning system. We are not sure whether we are going to follow the chart or Lacey and her team will develop something better. We know it's going to be better than whatever is out there because they are going to build on whatever others have already developed. That's the end of our presentation for now. They've gone very far. We've had one meeting already with them. And we expect that in the next 2 months, we'll have our guidelines, which all the counties and all the districts would be using as a standard for the whole state. Thank you. If you have any questions for me.
So I'll start this way. Commissioner Bruce?
Well, I drive Pyramid most days of the week. And I turn at Cali de la Plata on the Pyramid. I'm not sure about the continuously flashing. It doesn't bother me because I'm turning right onto Cali at that point. But I have had some neighbors comment that it throws them. Now, that may be what you want to do because
a lot of times when people get thrown, they take their foot off the accelerator rather than pushing down. And my issue, I like the pre-warning, the pre-flashing, the active. I don't like sometimes the timing, because there's a couple, and I believe that the one there at Los Altos, that you can pass the warning light and still it'll be changing when you just get to the intersection. That the timing, it needs to start flashing maybe 1 second earlier. And I like the early warning, and I wonder about the continuously flashing, and I know that the static sign, it's, generally that would be in a much lower density population area. So I strongly recommend the active on Pyramid.
Well, our research would hopefully, in fact, Lacey's research is already showing that states that use the active really love it. And we want to follow the engineering study and come up with the best for the state. So we'll see how their research
I
shows.
appreciate the presentation, and I understand you're constantly trying to figure out how to save us drivers from ourselves. Thank you.
Full-time job.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I just wanted a little clarification. Are you saying that the active warning systems do a much better job than the passive, or I wasn't clear on that?
So the MUTCD is trying to shift from the active to the passive. But we found out that some states still prefer the active. And part of our reason is that, okay, we are not just going to blindly stick to MUTCD. We want to find out what is best for our state. If the active is what we think is best, we will go active. Or if the active is best for some conditions and the passive is best for some conditions, we want the guidelines to guide us so that we can provide the best in our situation. We don't want to just take it wholly and then go with that.
So it varies, I guess.
Yes, we would vary depending on the circumstance.
Okay, yeah.
The question I have, and I know you're still in gathering data and such, but at Disk Drive when you're traveling north, because it's a blind hill, so you really need active there because you're going to crest that hill and all of a sudden you see a signal the situation with Pyramid is it's overdriven every day, and it's a pretty dangerous road. I don't even try to come out of Bridle Path and take a left turn onto Pyramid Highway, so.
Well noted. I think that's one of the ones we are considering to be active, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Chesney.
Well, I also drive Pyramid Highway from Palomino Valley into intersect with 395 or McCarran, wherever, once, sometimes 3 times a day, both ways. And I can tell you what works and what doesn't work. The active AWS works, period. The passive AWS at Caladito Pla right now, it's like going into a fight zone. It's so confusing because the people of this state are so used to the active AWS, and then they see these flashing yellow lights and they're still doing 55 miles an hour, and bang, that yellow light comes on at the signal and they're scrambling like hell on their brakes. And I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It's not just me. I could bring you 100 witnesses in here from the area out there that'll tell you the same thing. That's the most confusing signal that I've ever seen. And so that don't work. And not my opinion, there's a big consensus about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haran. Commissioner Doncheck.
I want to thank you for the presentation, and I'm just following up with here. I think the active is much more effective, because in a passive, you're going to get people that are so used to seeing it, they're going to blank it out. It's not going to do anything because it's already going. They're not really going to pay attention to it. So has there been any statistics on areas where they stopped using it because it just, the people aren't paying attention to it? It's like desensitizing because it's always there. They aren't paying attention to it anymore.
Actually, today we were talking about that, so Lacey can probably talk more about it.
I know she's been right.
Hi, Lacey Kolkman. I do have two anecdotal notes that I'd like to add to what Commissioner Barnes said and what Commissioner Chesney said. National research has actually shown that when we use these active systems, drivers tend to overdrive the active systems. And so we've tended to see that in places where they're put in, we have a decrease in the crashes for the first 6 months, but when they do the follow-up 1 year and 3 year crash analysis, they're finding that they go up. And it's because people tend to use those flashers to determine how fast they need to go to beat the red light. And so, you know, in some of the states that have done some analysis on this, in fact, I do have the stats for Ohio. When they were actually removing some of these systems, they were finding a 23% reduction in total crashes. They're actually finding that there's a 42% in angle crashes, a 50% reduction in red light running crashes. That's exactly what we're talking about. People are overdriving the systems in some cases. So your comment about timing being very important is a pertinent comment, especially if it's an active system. But there is some research out there that's pointing to the need for us to reevaluate these systems and their uses in the country. And we're not saying that one is better than the other. What we're saying is that there's particular conditions where one should be used and one should not. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sam, great presentation, thank you. And Lacey, thank you for the clarification. Advanced signal warning systems have the potential to, they moderate my behavior as a driver. I know when I see them start flashing, I know whether to press the gas or the brake and how fast to go to beat that light. But I would agree with all the anecdotal evidence to me suggests that, and my experience in traffic safety studies has demonstrated repeatedly that driver expectation is a huge component of any mitigation. And if in Nevada, quite honestly, if I see those lights flashing, I think the light's going to change, so I slow down. And so you start getting speed differentials, depending on whether it's an old guy like me at the wheel or my crazed wife trying to go to the market, you know. So,
Yeah.
I said that for her benefit. I'm on my way out. So I really appreciate that NDOT does this type of work with such qualified consulting firms like HDR. And I know that I've known Lacey for a long time, and I find her to be one of the most competent professionals I've ever worked with. So you're going to get good results from this thing. And I commend you on looking at it, because the passive systems, I'm sure, do have application in some environments. I don't think that's the Pyramid Highway, and I don't think it's any road I drive on. But I'm sure there are roads in Nevada that it has application. So I commend you for investigating, doing a thoughtful research endeavor to find out where the applications are. And thank you for coming and enlightening us to how all of this ties together. I appreciate the access management presentation. I appreciate this one. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Bruce.
I just had one more comment, that the passive system strikes me as being very useful for Highway 50 or Pyramid Highway north of Pyramid Lake, up toward Gerlach and on up there, where you're driving along and it's like, oh, there's a light up there and it's going to change. And thank you again, both of you, very commendable.
Thank you
you.
very much. Now we're on to item 9, which is a public hearing item. If we could have, call for the agenda item.
This is Development Code Amendment, case number WDCA 19-0003, for parking requirements for personal storage. As for possible action, hearing, and discussion on an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110 within Article 410, parking and loading, Table 110, 410, 10.3, off-street parking space requirements, to reduce the requirement for 1 parking space per storage unit to 1 parking space per 200 square feet of building footprint, and for other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. And if proposed amendment is initiated, public hearing and further possible action to deny or recommend approval of the proposed amendment, and if approval is recommended, to authorize the chair to sign a resolution to that effect. And representing Washoe County in this item is Planner Jacob Parker. Lost for a second.
Okay, for disclosure by commissioners? Any? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. First off, for a point of clarification, you said 200 square feet. Is it listed as 200 or 2,000?
2,000.
2,000.
Good.
So let's talk parking.
Good
I'm
catch,
here
thank
for WCA 19-0003, the parking space requirements for personal storage. My name is Jacob Parker. I'm a planner with Washoe County Community Services Department. Let's dive right in. This is the background. Currently, the Table 110.410.10.3 has a requirement for personal storage uses, 1 loading space per unit. So if you have 30, you have to have 30 loading spaces on the property. Seems it's pretty extraneous. So staff has recommended approval for applications in the past with fewer code-defined spaces than required based on that realization that this is a little bit extra. So this request is an initiation and a request to amend the development code entabled 110.410.10.3, off-street parking space requirements. The proposed update to Table 110.410.10.3 will decrease this required loading space for personal storage. All right. So this is a look at the table. I should also mention in the winery section, there is a grammatical error as well. There was a lowercase at the beginning of a new sentence that we had to capitalize. You can see it down there starting with minimum. It's in the second, actually the correction's in the 3rd line for the winery. But for the main purpose of this DCA is the personal storage loading spaces. Again, it started with 1 loading space per unit. We're requesting to amend it to 1 per 2,000 square foot of building footprint. That would alleviate the footprint, kind of condense it, give us a little more space for developers. We held an open house, all CAB members and public invited. There was only 1 attendee from Truckee Meadows Fire. No one had any comment at the open house. I did receive 1 emailed comment. It wasn't exactly clear, but they understood it as we were getting rid of the parking space requirement. They thought it would be wise to keep parking space requirement, not necessarily that the number of required spaces was needed. We also noticed in the Reno Gazette-Journal for this hearing. Here are the code amendment findings. There's the 4. We were able to make all 4 required findings. And then I have a possible motion, and I'm available for any comments.
This is a public hearing item. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Then I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Any commission questions?
Seems very logical.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesney.
I'd like to make an initiation and a motion.
Okay.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and received during the public hearing, Washoe County Planning Commission initiate the amendment to the Washoe County Code Chapter 110, Article 410, parking and loading as described in the staff report WDCA 19-0003. Do I need to read the amendment?
Yes. No.
Just reference it.
Okay, referencing the amendment.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Commissioner Chesney and seconded by Commissioner Doncheck. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 10.
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry.
real quick. The motion was to initiate the amendment. The rest of the agenda item is now to recommend approval
Okay,
and authorize the chair to sign the resolution.
so that what we have here is initiation and
Yeah,
an
you just
amendment.
initiated the amendment. Step
Okay.
2 is to recommend approval or denial.
All right.
And if you recommend approval, authorizing the chair to sign the resolution.
So then I did need to read the amendment.
Now you, okay.
Okay. All right, here we go.
That was the question, yeah, okay.
Wow. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission recommend approval of WDCA 19-003 to amend Washoe County Code Chapter 110 within Article 410, parking loading, as described in the staff report for this matter. I further move to authorize the chair to sign the resolution contained in Exhibit A on behalf of the Planning Commission and to direct staff to present a report with this commission's recommendation to the Washoe County Board of Commissioners within 60 days of today's date. This recommendation for approval is based on all of the following 4 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code, Section 110.818.5 E.
Madam Chair, I second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Chesney and seconded by Commissioner Doncheck to approve the amendment. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we're on to item 10, chair and commission items. 10A, future agenda items. (10B), request for information from staff.
Madam Chair, I don't know if this is a request from staff, but one of the things I've mentioned in the past is that we as Planning Commission should be getting the agendas for the BCC on a regular basis. I don't get anything. I have to hunt for it. I get information on the city of Reno, all of their meetings all the time. I get nothing from the county. I have to hunt for it. And as a planning, I used to get them as a planning commission. I believe we should be getting all CAB agendas, all meetings, so we can make it easier for us to stay on top of some items. So I'd like to see that corrected if possible, please.
I second the motion.
This is just discussion for future agenda and information from staff.
So let me ask the question, because, and I apologize if I have not heard this request yet, but is that unanimous with all the commissioners? You would like to see all of the CAB agendas, is that correct? Okay, because there's a lot of them.
But then I
okay.
don't know what might,
A delete button works really well.
Yes.
Will do, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, but I get a notification of all the CAB meetings, and if you click on the little blue thingy there, it will lead you to the agendas. It does for me anyhow.
well, I mean, if I get the notifications, it's usually linked in there. But
Right.
I stopped getting any kind of notifications from the CABs. And at one point, I was on there for the listing saying I wanted them all.
I agree,
was.
yeah, I agree with that.
I was, no.
Sometimes I get them the same day.
Well, and
the meeting,
that's
you
the
know?
problem, when you
Yeah.
only get them, you don't get enough notice for them. But even then, as part of the planning commission, I believe we should be getting notifications for all the agendas when the BCC is meeting, and not just the highlights, which really have nothing to do with what we're working with.
Madam Chair, I
Mr.
promise
White.
to flood all of your inboxes with the CAB agendas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Any other requests for information from staff? Item 11, Director and Legal Counsel items. A, report on previous Planning Commission items.
Nothing to report on previous Planning Commission items. I just wanted to take a little time to acknowledge and recognize the service that Commissioner Michael Lawson has provided. This is his last meeting, and would welcome him back next week, where we will be honoring him with a
Next month.
resolution. Next month, next meeting. Thank you.
Legal information and, I'm sorry,
Can we add to that, or do we have to wait for our comments?
we'll go to, when we, in public comment, I'll ask for that,
Thank you.
please. Legal information and updates?
Nothing else.
Okay. We're now to general public comments and discussion. Do we have any general public comment?
We do Steve Wolgast.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Steve Wolgast. I especially want to thank Mike Lawson for his efforts on this body. He has brought clear-eyed logic to his role. He has learned that the county staff see their role as enabling the development. When the staff claim a new project is compliant, he will review the applicable documents to confirm that this is true or challenge their assertion when it is not. When a developer-sponsored traffic report was performed on a holiday weekend, he will challenge the result. When a developer-sponsored hydrology report does not include the contribution of wastewater to flooding, he will challenge that result. When a developer-sponsored geotech study does not include known faults, he will raise that issue. This body has proven itself capable of skeptical review, identifying irresponsible projects and denying them as appropriate. I really hope this will continue. There appear to be capable applicants to fill Mike's seat. This body should be able to continue its work to the highest standards. The old motels are being torn down to make room for new projects. By this, I'm reminded that many of these motels have lasted over 50 years, even though their construction was always close to temporary quality. Homes that are built now will likely be here 100 years from now, barring a disaster. That means that new developments that produce gridlock will likely produce gridlock for generations. New developments that detract from neighborhoods will still be an eyesore for generations. New developments that produce flooding problems will be a hazard for generations. Your decisions and your analytical approach to judging new development plans are vital for the quality of life all over the Truckee Meadows. I hope this body moves forward with his replacement in the same spirit of skeptical review of new projects, knowing that these are driven by profit. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
No further public comment.
I'll start to also thank Commissioner Lawson for his time on this body, and I appreciate what you've brought to the group, and like Mr. Lloyd said, we'll have a resolution for you next month. Commissioner Donchek.
I had another point to bring up, only because I was getting mad texts. For some reason, you could get in the lobby, but our doors coming in here were locked, so if anybody else tried to come in here, they could not. Somehow security had locked down all the doors coming into the chambers.
Okay.
I didn't want to, but I just
Thank
wanted
you.
notified, please, that I have a very angry person that's going to make a open meeting law violation or a complaint. And the fact, once again, security locked out people from attending. Sorry.
Commissioner Haran.
I'd like to thank Michael also for his participation. I think one of the things that really makes, I think this, for me anyway, board enjoyable is that we have members on the board of all different skill sets that they bring to the table. And I think it's important that we continue to do that. And I think that each of us have a great deal of respect. That we're going to miss your expertise, Michael.
I'd also like to thank Mike. He's done a great job. He's brought a lot of knowledge to the table, and I think that his void's going to be pretty tough to fill. He's understands traffic studies, engineering studies, geological studies at a level that even I, as an electrical engineer, don't understand, and I think that he's going to leave a pretty sizable gap in the commission.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes, I'd like to add to that. I think Mike has been a great addition to the board, and I really appreciate, as was mentioned, the logical approach he takes to everything, and his knowledge of traffic studies, hydrology, and everything else is going to be very hard to replace. So I'd like to thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Bruce.
I too would like to thank you, Mike. they haven't left much else for me to say.
That'd be a first.
But I think your shoes are going to be very difficult to fill, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the conversations and the advice, whether I took it or not. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, now that I've calmed down about the doors, I want to say thank you. With your approach and the knowledge that you brought, it helped me grow and learn more and be able to get a better perspective on things. Thank you very much.
If no other public comment, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Donchek, if you would give the name of that person to Mr. Lloyd.